Welcome to Joe's Recaps. In this video, we are going to comment a movie called After Earth. Climate change and overpopulation have caused global destruction on Earth. Uniting Ranger Corps organizes an evacuation of the planet, and humanity is given the opportunity to settle in a space colony called Nova Prime. A race of aliens known as Skrell sends a group of Ursas to invade since they see that humans are vulnerable. These Ursas are vicious predators that were bred to kill humans. Although they're blind, they're able to hunt people by detecting the pheromones when a person gets frightened. To stop the invasion, the Rangers fight the Ursas with their blades, and Prime Commander Cypher becomes a hero when he learns how to suppress his fears. By not showing any fear, a person becomes invisible to the Ursas. This is a technique known as ghosting.
For more videos like this, subscribe and click the notification bell.
A few years after the war, Cypher's son, Kitai, is a trainee at the Ranger Academy. He wants to be like his father. Even in the most basic of tests like jogging, he puts extra effort. Although while his test scores are great, he isn't doing well in the field, so Kitai doesn't get the promotion to Ranger. Later in the evening, when Cypher comes home from a mission, Kitai tells him he's failed to get promoted. Instead of showing comfort toward his son, Cypher stays cold and tells Kitai must have not been ready. Also, the commander knows what he's doing. Cypher always acts cold toward his family, as if he didn't know how to turn off the soldier mode. After dinner, Cypher brings his wife Faya a gift and tells her that he'll be leaving the next day for Ifito to train cadets. After that mission is over, he intends to retire and work with her in the admin department. Faya is glad to hear that and points out he should spend more time with Kitai, chat with him and be less distant. She tells Kitai needs a father, not a commanding officer. She thinks Kitai has lots of insecurities because he blames himself for the death of his sister Senshi, and tries to connect with her by reading her favorite book, Moby Dick. So Cypher approaches Kitai and tells him he'll come to Ifito with him. Sometime later, the crew gets ready to leave. Kitai notices a ranger with an amputated leg approaching his father to express his gratitude for saving him during the war with the Ursas. Cypher thinks it's not necessary, but the ranger still asks his friends to help him stand up to salute properly. Once the trip begins, Kitai tries to connect with his father and tells him he's reading Moby Dick. But Cypher isn't much of a talker and keeps his answers cold and short. Then he tells Kitai that he should sleep for the rest of the journey. Kitai pretends to obey, but when Cypher is asleep, he leaves his seat and explores the ship. He finds a mysterious area with warning signs, but he enters anyway, and the guarding rangers immediately scold him for it. However, when they realize he's Cypher's son, they allow him to come in and see their cargo. It turns out they're transporting an Ursa. It will be used to teach the cadets how to ghost. The ranger dares Kitai to touch the Ursa's shell and test his emotional control. But when Kitai begins walking closer, he begins having flashbacks of the day his sister died. An Ursa had attacked their home, and Senshi put Kitai inside a glass containment to keep the monster from smelling him. Right when Kitai is about to touch the shell, the Ursa smells his fear and roars at him. This causes him step back. At that moment, Cypher wakes up and senses some strange vibrations. He uses his ring against the ship wall to confirm there's danger coming. He rushes to tell the Rangers to be on full alert, and he orders Kitai to put on his life suit and strap himself to his seat. Then Cypher goes to the cockpit and sees that they're heading toward an asteroid storm. Before they can correct their course, the ship begins shaking. As it gets hit by the asteroids, it loses an engine. Cypher orders the pilots to enter the nearest wormhole. That way, they can travel to a different course. The ship crosses the wormhole safely and appears near Earth, but the law says nobody should return to it because of its dangers. Cypher wants to head somewhere else, but the pilots explain the ship has taken too much damage. It means they must land as soon as possible. As the ship gets closer to Earth's atmosphere, it begins shaking again, and Kitai panics. So Cypher guides him to take deep breaths to calm him down. At that moment, the ship begins breaking apart, and Cypher is blown away by the wind as Kitai falls unconscious. Sometime later, Kitai wakes up and discovers the ship has crashed. He leaves his seat to look for the others, but all the Rangers are dead. Luckily, he finds Cypher and confirms he's still alive. So Kitai sits there and waits for him to wake up. When Cypher gains consciousness, Kitai explains to him that the ship's tail is gone. It means the Ursa is gone as well. Cypher guides Kitai to the cockpit to find the emergency beacon, but when he tries to use it, he he sees it's broken. Afterwards, Kitayi puts Cypher on a stretcher and takes him to the ship's main computer. Cypher checks the inventory and confirms there's another beacon in the ship's tail. Since both his legs are hurt, Cypher gives Kitayi the mission to find the tail. The scanner says it's about 100 kilometers away. Then Cypher gives Kitayi his blade and 6 vials of air filtration inhalers that will help him breathe in Earth's hostile environment. He also informs him that the life suit and the backpack have cameras, so Cypher will see everything Kitayi sees. The boy needs to be really careful because everything on Earth has evolved to kill humans. It makes Kitayi remember how he had to watch his sister being killed by an Ursa. Kitayi asks Cypher about the Ursa that they were carrying, and Cypher thinks it must have died in the crash, but it's safer to assume it's still out there. After taking one of the inhalers, Kitayi leaves the ship and gets very nervous. Because he can see all the bodies, Cypher makes him take the knee to calm him down and reminds him to concentrate to overcome his fears. Then Kitayi begins his journey. It allows him to meet lots of animals he's never seen in his life. When he reaches the top, he sees birds flying through the sky and cattle grazing on the plains. It's a stunning view for him. At that moment, Cypher releases a bunch of probes to find the Ursa, and he reminds Kitayi that the temperature heavily drops at night. He must find one of the many hot spots before it gets dark. Then Cypher scans his own injuries and sees his leg bones are broken. It makes him consider taking some medicine to fight the pain, but the label warns him that the shot could make him drowsy and impair his vision, so he decides not to take the medicine. Sometimes later, Kitayi notices his suit has turned black. Cypher explains it's equipped with motion sensors, and the black color means there's a life form coming for him. Suddenly, a large baboon emerges from the woods, and Cypher advises Kitayi to stay still, but he prefers tossing a rock at it to scare it away. This causes all the baboons to come out and begin throwing rocks at Kitayi. The boy begins running as fast as possible. Cypher guides him toward the nearest river. Kitayi quickly crosses the river, but even if the baboons aren't following him anymore, he keeps running. Because he's too nervous and scared, Cypher yells at him to make him stop, and he makes him take the knee so he'll calm down. At that moment, Cypher notices there are toxins in Kitayi's bloodstream and asks his son to check his body. Kitayi discovers he has a leech on his hand and immediately takes it off, but the toxin is still in his system. Cypher gives him instructions to inject the antidote, but he's starting not to feel his hands anymore, so Kitayi has to drop his body on the needle to make it stick, and he falls unconscious. A few hours later, Cypher notices the temperature is going down and forces Kitayi to wake up. He must find a hotspot, which is 10 kilometers away. Kitayi begins running as fast as he can. While Cypher watches his son, the computer informs him he needs an arterial shunt to treat his leg. Cypher refuses to take the medicine again and goes through the procedure while enduring the pain. When Kitayi finally reaches the hotspot, he checks his equipment. He discovers 2 inhalers are broken, but he lies to his dad and says he's got them all. Cypher sees a reaction on the screen that may indicate lying, but doesn't say anything. Kitayi hides under a tree while it begins to rain. He uses the chance to ask his dad how he managed to ghost during the war. Cypher tells him an Ursa once stabbed him in his shoulder with its pincer. During the struggle, they fell into a river. The Ursa tried to drown him. When Cypher accepted his death, the pincer came out because the Ursa couldn't find him anymore. Cypher had understood that fear wasn't real. It's only a thing in people's thoughts about the future. Next morning, Cypher sends Kitayi to the waterfall because the probes have found some interesting things. On his way there, Kitayi sees a pile of dead monkeys. It is a proof of a great danger. Once Kitayi makes it to the falls, Cypher makes him check his inventory. Kitayi tries to lie about the inhalers again. Cypher calls out his lie and makes some calculations. It indicates Kitayi won't be able to finish the mission without the inhalers, so he orders him to abort the mission. Kitayi begins thinking about how he had to watch Senshi die and refuses to do that with his dad, so he tells Cypher he won't be a coward again. Cypher insists that Kitayi should turn around, but Kitayi ignores him and jumps off the falls, using his suit to glide through the air. At that moment, a huge condor shows up and begins chasing him, so Kitayi tries to hide behind the waterfalls, but the condor is fast, and as soon as Kitayi comes out, the bird attacks him. Kitayi falls unconscious and Cypher loses all communication with him. Moments later, Kitayi wakes up in the condor's nest. He tries to leave quietly, but suddenly, several lions show up and try to get inside. The condor attacks, but many of them dodge it and keep on trying to enter. Kitai manages to throw a lion out, and the condor grabs another, but when a third lion comes in, Kitai has no choice but to use his blade. He doesn't want to fight, so instead he makes the lion fall. Once all the lions are gone, Kitai leaves the nest, and he sees the condor mourning the death of all its chicks. Afterwards, Kitai tries to contact his dad, but he discovers his communicator is broken. Meanwhile, Cypher gets images from his drones showing the bodies of the rangers hanging on a tree. It means the Ursa is out there alive. Cypher decides to record a message for his wife. He says he's lost their son. Meanwhile, Kitai keeps traveling through the forest. At night, he hides inside a cave to avoid the night cold. He makes some calculations about the distance he has left and his inventory. The chances aren't good, but he must try anyway. The next morning, Kitai leaves the cave and notices the condor is following him. He thinks it wants to attack him. Kitai begins running away, and soon he needs to use his last inhaler. Afterwards, Kitai builds a small raft to sail down the river. When he takes a nap, he dreams of Senshi appearing next to him. He tries to tell her that on the day of her death, he almost left the containment to help her, but she doesn't mind because she thinks he did the right thing by saving himself. She also thinks Cypher is mad at himself for what happened. Then Kitai tries to recite Moby Dick to prove he's been reading it, but Senshi yells at him and wakes up. Kitai opens his eyes and discovers the raft has reached land. The temperature starts to drop, so Kitai rushes to find a hotspot, but he isn't fast enough and falls unconscious. The plants surrounding him freeze. Kitai thinks he'll die, but when he wakes up in the morning, he discovers something on top of him that kept him warm. It turns out it's the condor. It saved him as thanks for fighting for its chicks. After thanking the creature, Kitai keeps on his journey. It gets hard to breathe, but finding a piece of the ship on the ground inspires him to keep going. Moments later, Kitai finally finds the ship's tail. He immediately takes more inhalers and a new blade. Then he investigates the area and finds the Ursa shell is open. Back on the ship, Cypher suddenly woke up by Kitai's voice. He's found a communicator and the beacon in the ship's tail. Cypher tries to talk to him, but Kitai can't hear him because he's in the black zone. Kitai doesn't know this and tries to use the beacon anyway, but it doesn't work. He gets frustrated and devastated. Soon, he remembers his father's advice and takes the need to calm himself down. Kitai realizes that there's an interference in the area and climbing the volcano should allow him to activate the beacon. On his way to the volcano, Kitai finds the body of a ranger. The Ursa left there to scare and trigger pheromones. Kitai tries his best to ignore it and keeps going. He reaches the base of the volcano. He tries to launch the beacon again and fails. Cypher notices the Ursa on the scanner and hopes his son acts fast before it finds him. Then Kitai enters a cave to find a way to the top of the volcano. Inside, he finds the Ursa waiting for him, and the monster immediately attacks, but it gets trapped under a pile of rocks in the process. Kitai begins running as the Ursa frees itself and chases him, so the boy decides to hide in a pool of water. Back on the ship, the computer starts failing, and Cypher loses access to the medical treatment. It causes him to lose consciousness. Meanwhile, Kitai swims toward a source of light that allows him to resurface into a pit. When he starts to climb it to reach the top of the volcano, the Ursa suddenly jumps out of the water and grabs his foot. Kitai kicks the beast to send it back into the water, then finishes climbing the pit. Immediately, Kitai tries to activate the beacon, but the Ursa returns and jumps on him, hitting him on the rocks and making him drop the gadget. As Kitai lies on the ground in pain, he remembers the day Senshi protected him and all the advice Cypher has given him. It allows Kitai to finally concentrate and overcome his fear, achieving ghosting. The creature loses track of him and Kitai takes advantage of its confusion to attack it with his blade. Since the beast can't defend itself, it only takes Kitai a few precise strikes to finally kill it. Cypher sees it all before he loses consciousness. Afterwards, Kitai finally fires the beacon, and in a few hours the Rangers arrive to rescue them. Kitai is worried about his dad. When he checks on him, he confirms he's fine. Cypher forces himself to stand up and salute his son with respect for his bravery, but Kitai runs to hug his father as he says he wants to work with his mom. For the first time ever, Cypher hugs back and responds he also wants to do the same. For more videos like this, subscribe and click the notification bell, and don't forget to hit the like button. Also, you can check our other videos. Enjoy and take care.